Grief is such an overpowering emotion, especially after losing someone so close to you. It can take months, years, even decades to get back to normal, if that's even possible after experiencing a significant loss. This podcast was created to help you move through and release the emotions, allowing you to heal the hurt and begin living again. Listen in as I chat with medical professionals, grief workers, and people who have first-hand experience in losing a loved one, what their experience has been, and what they did to help heal themselves and those around them. Life isn't always sunshine and rainbows, but I believe there is always a silver lining if you're willing to look. Welcome to the Release Podcast. Hi, welcome to another episode of Release Grief Podcast. Today I am here with Hope Reger, who is a published author, a brand new, as of this episode recording, nonprofit group person. I don't know how that did not come out very well at all, but her book is named Grief to Hope and her nonprofit is Grief to Hope as well. Welcome, Hope. Thank you so much for being on here. And yeah, after that glorious introduction,
I love it. It's me. It's raw. It's grit. It's perfect. Thank you. I love being here with you.
You are so welcome. My biggest question is, what got you into the grief world? Because we both came from Tony's group, or we're both in there, I should say. We didn't come from it, but we're both in there. And so a fellow grief worker as well. I want to give mad props because this is not an easy field to be in at all. At all.
Right.
So
right.
What brought you in to the grief world?
I love that. Yeah, what we do is we talk about people's two worst fears. We talk about death and grief, and those are like, welcome to our world. But yeah. Absolutely. So what started me in grief, unfortunately, as we all usually get that way in, is in 2016, I lost my 19-year-old son to murder. He was absolutely in a horrific situation where him and his roommate got into an altercation. It started out as a verbal fight, like some men do, and then it turned physical. And then his roommate pulled a gun and put it to my son's chest and shot and killed him. Now, my son didn't have any weapons or any kind of thing, guns, knives, any of that, but he was arrested for murder. And this was at 1:30 in the morning. And I didn't.
Your son was arrested for murder, or the guy?
No, the guy that shot and killed my son was arrested for murder. And he literally was taken into jail. And this was 1:30 in the morning. And then my son was pronounced in the hospital a little bit later, but I didn't find out till 6:30 that following morning, when I had two policemen arrive at my door knocking. And I was thinking, what could this possibly be? Like, not thinking anything horrific. I have two sons, and and I was living about an hour and a half away from both of them at the time. And so when I opened the door, the policeman handed me a piece of paper that had a name and number on it. So again, I'm not thinking this is horrific. This is something, and they said, somebody's trying to reach you. I'm thinking one of my children have gotten into trouble and forgotten the mom's cell phone number, right? And my oldest son was, had started his family and was living. So I was pretty much sure it was Justin had gotten into trouble, which was my 19-year-old. And simply, I asked them if they knew what it was about. And they said no. They were not sure, which I'm not 100% sure on that. They probably were just like, we're not telling her.
I don't want to be in that situation.
Right, exactly. We're skinning by on this one. And so I thanked them. I shut the door and I went upstairs, and my husband said, what was that all about? And I said, I'm sure it has to do with Justin. He's probably gotten into trouble. And I thought nothing, was horrible or traumatic and so I dialed the number, and the person on the other line simply answered Greene County Coroner. And that is how I found out my son had passed. And so literally, he was very apologetic. I felt after the fact, of course, and, things down the road, I felt horrible that, he had to do that over the phone, and he did as well. And he
Oh, sure.
profusely apologized and said he was sorry he had to do this over the phone. But he told me the story of what had happened, and that the gentleman was arrested, but Justin was already in the morgue at this time.
Wow.
Now, as a mother, you're in shock, you're in denial, you're in like a fog, like just in a totally overwhelming kind of space. And I just kept thinking, I've got to get to my son to fix this.
Right.
Like I couldn't
Yeah, because as
comprehend.
a mother, you want to
Right.
fix whatever's wrong.
Right. And all I could think was he was cold and alone, and I just had to fix this.
Yeah,
Right.
you needed to be
And
there.
right. And so that was how I found out about my son and what the circumstances were. And then just going forward several months later, when it went to the criminal case, he pled self-defense. And because of a technicality of where he was standing compared to where my son was standing, they allowed the self-defense. So he was never punished or prosecuted. It didn't even make it past the grand jury. So doing so with all of this grief, having that civil on top of it, I was mad as hell.
Oh, for sure.
I was mad as hell. I was angry. I was frustrated. And I was like, I can't do this, right? I can't, like, I let my son down. I didn't protect him as a mother, right? I couldn't, I wasn't there when he needed me. Some other things that happened, like I couldn't provide the answers to the organ donations, and my son wanted to be an organ donor. So I let him down with that. And then on top of this, now I can't even get justice for what happened.
Right.
So I was angry at everybody, everything, any kind of emotion was masked. I couldn't find people that got it. Like everybody would use that, I understand. But nobody got the anger that was building up inside me. Nobody understood. And so what happened was the day after I left the prosecuting attorney's office, I said to myself, okay, I had two choices, right? I can lay in my bed. I can be angry as hell and live the rest of my life that way, right? And no one would question it, right? No one would question me. No one would say, get out of bed. You have so much to live for. Not one person would do that, right? They would agree with it.
They would let you sit there and rot.
Correct. Or I can get my ass out of bed and I can move forward in my son's honor and start to live for him in another way that was all about how he lived versus how he was taken. Right. And so that's how I got into this grief work.
Oh my gosh. I cannot even imagine like that journey at all. I mean, it's hard enough to get a phone call that your child is gone, but to literally call a number that was given to you and have the coroner's office answer on the other end, like that's just a whole other level of shock.
Right.
That your mind just probably did not want to at all, like accept.
Correct.
This is not real. This is not real. He's just laying there. This is a joke. I always go to like, this is a joke. Why are you playing a stupid joke on me? Right. Why are you doing this dumbass prank? Because I don't like it.
Right.
Like, stop right now.
Right. And nothing
not.
Like yeah.
Like, why would somebody do this prank on you knowing, because they wouldn't, honestly, they wouldn't. Right. But in your mind's just trying to justify all the stuff going on. And it's just, oh. May I ask what month this happened in?
So this was in November of 2016.
Gotcha.
And so just imagine a week after it happened, it was November 17th. It was Thanksgiving. So I had to have the funeral through the holidays. And then Christmas came, and then New Year's came, and then his birthday was February 5th. And I tell everybody, I was in that brain grief fog for those 3 months. And then on the back of my mind, I was like, I'm going to get justice for Justin. I'm going to get justice.
Yeah.
He's going to pay for this. I just got to be patient, because that the criminal system is crazy in itself. But I was told by the victim advocate over and over, no, he pled, I mean, he said he killed him. There was no doubt, and he admitted to it. And so I truly believed that this was going to be an easy process as far as him taking responsibility for it. And then when that happened, I literally was like shocked all over again. It was like feeling this wave of emotion. And now that I look back on it, and as I'm in my grief work and my support groups, watching people go through the trial process, watching people go through that criminal activity after they lose one, is extremely hard. And it adds a whole nother layer. So I think, as horrible as I think the justice system was, I believe that it happened for a reason, that I could close that door and be able to do grief work moving forward, versus I think it almost puts a delay on your grief as you go through the trial process.
I'm going to say yes. I can't release a ton of details, but I would say yes, going through a trial process. It just keeps like ripping open that wound all the time. It's just like you don't get closure, because you have this thing that you have no idea, all the stress from this court case or whatever's impending, like it just keeps going and going and going. And so it's really hard to get closure when there's no closure on that front,
Right. And
go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, and that's the reason why I think that I was able to shut that door and say, okay, listen, he took Justin from me, but he wasn't going to take Hope. And that's when I decided that I was not going to allow him to take anything else from me ever. And not my time, my energy, my thoughts, none of that. I had to focus it all on Justin and living for him. So that is it's almost like a blessing that it happened the way that it did. Because watching people go through it, it's very hard.
It's interesting you say the blessing, because I have found multiple blessings, and I'll tie back into what I was going to say before, of losing our daughter, because the blessings, that I have now, I wouldn't have been able to see them had she still been here, or all of the things, that's happened since her passing. And the reason I was asking what month is because my daughter was 19 and she died in 2016 as well. But hers was August 10th. Okay. Right. So close.
Yeah.
But it's just crazy. And I was like, oh no, it's not going to be August 10th.
That would be, yeah.
I'm like, it's crazy enough that it's the same year and the same age.
Correct. That is.
So talk to me a little bit about the grief to hope. So we went through the trial, and how it keeps you anxious, for lack of a better word. It just keeps it real and raw, and it's almost like you feel like you make headway, but yet you make nothing. It seems like you're always back at square one, or there's another letdown, or this person here said no, they're not in it anymore, this whatever's over here, and then going through. So what actually catapulted you into the healing process after the trial and stuff?
So when I first started grieving, and when I say that, I could not find groups. And now that I'm in the grief community, there's hundreds, right?
Yeah.
There's so many of us out here that it's a beautiful thing. However, grief isn't talked about as a normal conversation. So we don't know about these groups unless, we try to reach out. And I think that's one of the things that's just a struggle for us, is to say, we're here.
It feels like we're the seedy underbelly of the, the help world.
Right, right. Like nobody wants to talk about like everybody I've
Right.
ever thought about is or talked about with grief is like it's not contagious, guys. It's not contagious. You're not going to catch it from me. However, I don't wish it on anybody, but we're always the last thought. Nobody wants to think about it. It's a horrible thing
Right.
to think about. And
I
so
agree.
one of the things was I couldn't find anybody. I couldn't there was a Christian-based grief group that I started in, and I just was very uneducated about God, and I was very uncomfortable
Mhm.
with the religious aspect of the grief group. Now, what I did learn was that being around others in this group gave me so much power and it gave me so much strength. And I'm still friends with all of those people from 2017.
That's
And
awesome.
that, yeah, that I met within that group. But I found that it was it was healing in itself to talk about it with others, but it was also healing to hear about their stories.
Yeah.
And so I knew something, like I wanted to do something, but I just didn't know. And plus, I was pretty fresh in grief.
Yeah.
So 2017, 18, 19, I did a lot of volunteering. I wrote blogs. I talked. I tried to do as much like helping in the community, volunteering. I started writing a book. And I was trying to find what that like what was my purpose. And COVID hit in 2020, right?
Yep. Yep.
And I was thinking to myself, I could not imagine grieving through COVID. And it added that layer on top of grief. And I was like, I've got
Yeah.
to do something. This is where I've got to start helping. And so I have a day job, and we were Zooming all day long. And I was thinking, that's it. That's it. Like I can reach out to people in their homes. They don't have to go anywhere. And we can
Right.
just be there for each other virtually. We can come in their pajamas. They could come and, drink coffee or wine or whatever. And they can just be with other people and know that they're not alone. Because
Right.
I think what COVID did was it uncovered loneliness, and people were dying. We were like,
They were dying all by themselves. There was
right.
no
No
human
funerals.
contact.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no funerals.
I
People,
couldn't imagine going to a funeral via Zoom.
right. Or FaceTiming your loved one to say last goodbyes. I'm like,
Yeah.
how
I
could
want to
that,
hug you. I want to hold you.
right,
I want to hold
right,
your hand. I want to,
right.
just be near you.
Yes. And so I thought, okay, Hope, this is it. This is the catapult, right? And so I prayed, and I've never like been again, I'm not very educated. And I said, this has got to be what I'm supposed to be doing. And literally pen to paper, and I created a 7-week virtual support program that I've offered free since 2020. I'm going into my 10th session, October 19th of this
Mm.
year. And it's been incredible. Like Grief to Hope is, like I said, 7 weeks. And the first week is sort of like what we're doing now. I introduce
Yeah.
myself, I tell my story, my why, and then I open it up, and nobody has to speak, nobody has to be on camera, but they can introduce themselves, they can talk about what happened, they can not talk about it, they can just listen. And then weeks 2 through 6, I spell out the word grief. So G is gift of time. We talk about how time helps, how time harms. Like people are sometimes rushing you to get through grief. Like there's a finish line to grief. People think I'm going to get to this point and then I'm going to be all better and it's going to magically go away.
Right.
Or people believe that in themselves.
I
Then
think
R,
I did for the longest time. I thought, okay, I just need to get through this grief process and I'll be done. But I didn't realize when it happened that this is something that I would deal with for the rest of my life.
absolute.
It's something that you have to, I liken it to gardening, like you have to pluck the weeds every day. Otherwise they will overtake you. And that's the same thing with your grief. If you're not constantly plucking those icky thoughts out and that nastiness out, eventually it will overtake you. And
I
so,
love that. Love it.
I'm a big gardener. I love gardening. We just got
Okay.
canning apples. Everything you could think of, I feel like. I'm tired of looking at apples, but it's the same thing.
But I
That's what
love
I
that.
do.
And now, yeah, that's awesome. I always say it's like a heartbeat monitor. You have like your ups and your downs. And then as time
Yes,
goes on, you have a little more lags, but you still have them. You still have
you
those ups and
do.
downs.
You do.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's the
So
same with the
that's,
weeds. Like,
yeah,
they're always going to grow back. They're always going to be weeds there, but it's how you manage those weeds going forward. If you get out there and you religiously just like, I'm going to work on it today, great. Even if you go a couple days, whatever, there's just going to be more weeds to pluck when you do go out there, I mean, it's just a knowledge that you have going forward, and to be able to manage those expectations each day when you wake up. Yeah.
I love that. I love it. Awesome. So R is receive help. So I talk about how we receive help, how we ask for help. I do a little thing that says, okay, if you had a magic wand and something could help you today, what would that
Yes.
be? Right. And
I
so a
love
lot
that.
of times, right. And a lot of times people are like, one of the examples we just had with our last session was she was like, I would just like to have like a group of widows that we get together, like, every so often. And that would be really cool. And so what I tried to make them realize is that magic wand's in their hand. They can
Yes.
create that. They can make that. And so ironically enough, she's actually working on that now. So trying to get them to understand that a lot of things that we need help with, we can take the lead on.
They're in our
And also
control.
like
Yeah.
how people, they say crazy things and, like that famous, if you need anything, let me know. We're not going to let you know. So stop
No.
asking that question.
No, but I've noticed that I even say that too, like to other people. I'm like, if you need anything, just let me know. Like, really, let me know because I'm here. But it's like, I know, and then I leave, and then I'm like, I know exactly where that's going to go. It's going to go be tucked into the pocket way in the back because it's not the time for them at that moment when it happens. Give
Right.
them a couple weeks, couple months, and be like, hey, you know what do you need? How can I help you? What
Right. And
what
that
do
be
you what do you
intentional.
need? Or just showing up, whatever.
Right. Right. And that's why I tell people, if you have a trusted friend that you can say, gosh, if people ask if they can help, can I just have them go to you and you tell them, hey, she needs her dog picked up. She needs groceries. She needs the lawn mowed. She needs, in 6 months, can you check in and say, make sure she did her
Yeah.
taxes? Those
Yeah.
kind of things. So that's why I try to lean on people and say, listen, if you want to take the pride factor out, find that trusted person. So when somebody asks if you need anything or is there anything I can help with, you can say, yeah, Jan, my friend, has a list of things. And if you want to, and it works out for your schedule, great. And that way you do get the help that you need, right?
I love
So
that.
yeah, it's really been really, really receptive. And then inspire, I is inspire, which is how grief to hope is completely based on. And so when I say inspire, everybody's like, what? You want me to be inspired and I'm
Right.
grieving?
Yeah.
And I'm like, that is exactly what I want you
Mhm.
to do. I want you to find that one thing that gets your butt out of bed every morning and focus on that one thing. And it will change, right? But it's that one thing, whether it's your family, your kids, but you have to put that focus on that. You cannot allow it to be I want to be happy. Okay. How are you going to make
Big.
yourself happy,
Right.
right?
Give
And
me
for
the
me,
steps on how you're gonna do that.
right. So write it down, make a conscious effort about it, live for it, dream for it. And if it's something that's, 90 days from now, great. Put it on the calendar, but make a plan that every day you're going to work towards that goal. Do one thing every single day working towards that goal. And what you find out is how strong you are in the accomplishment, right?
Right.
For me, it was quitting smoking. Like I literally thought if I could quit smoking after 30 years, I can do anything, right?
Yeah.
And I literally got up the next day and was like, I'm good. And then the
Yep.
next day, I'm good. I'm like, wow, I can do this. And so just focusing on something every single day is what is one
Yeah.
the inspiration kind of goes for. And then E is expectations. We have expectations. We know what we think grief is like and what actually grief is like, right? Like everybody says, you go through these 5 stages, and just like you said, there's a finish line. There's no finish line, and I kept working towards it. Like I kept going, okay, I'm gonna do this. I'm going to journal.
Like I've been through this stage. I'm done with the stage. Check it off the box. I'm heading into this stage. Check it off the box. I have one more stage left to go. I'm done. And then you're like, well, wait. I'm back in the anger one. I'm back in here. And then the stage, I liken that there's 6 stages because I created my own stage, which is what I call the nothingness, which encapsulates a few of the stages together, but it's like you feel nothing. Absolutely nothing. You're not thinking, you're not eating, you're not nothing. You're nothing.
I love it.
But it's like, yeah, I thought, oh, I'm done with that one. Boop.
Check.
Done.
And that's the thing. But when something happens and you fall back into that, or you have a really bad day, then you feel like you've failed. Oh, I'm gonna start all over again, right? So I think one of the things with expectations is talking about like things that we go through. For us, it's been 7 years. And for some, it's been 13 years, and for some, it's been 3 weeks, and for some in the group, it's been 30 days.
Yeah.
It's knowing the expectation that there is no expectations, that every single person is completely different. It's like a snowflake. We're all different. Even your grief towards different griefs are different. So like your grief towards your aunt is completely different than the loss of our children, right?
Absolutely.
And so, so even though you're the same person, your grief is going to constantly be different.
Yes.
So then F is for feel everything, which turns into this. I love it. It's my favorite. We talk about triggers first and how we can change the mindset of triggers. When they come, feel them, live them. And if you can change your mindset, like I had this where Justin would be walking. But if I saw anybody walking, it would trigger me. Justin never walked a day in his life. And like, he was a teenage boy. He caught rides everywhere. So I was like, why am I getting so upset seeing young people walking? And then I had to change my mindset into saying, he's with me. He's walking with me. That's where he want me to, I'm here, Mom. I'm walking with you through this journey. So talk about triggers. But then at the end of the meeting, I have them bring pictures. I have them share stories. I have them say their names. I have them tell me what they like on their pizza. I want to know everything they possibly want to share. And the smiles, the light up of them sharing and experiencing and people wanting to hear about their loved ones is overwhelmingly beautiful. It's incredible. And then the final meeting or session that we have is simply to hope. So I ask them, what's your next step? And I have them write down, what do they want to do? What's your next step? And that could be tomorrow. What do you want to do? Do you want to take a shower? Do you want to go through their things? Do you want to go to the gravesite and actually go to the gravesite?
Right.
Do you want to start a support program? So that is how Grief to Hope, that 7 weeks works. And it's very open conversation. We also end with any questions, anything somebody's going through the week. And then we take a break and we start it all back over again. And I have had people that have taken the course since 2020 that are still taking it with me.
Oh, that's beautiful.
Yes, it's amazing. I have one lady, believe it or not, this is the cutest story, but I have one lady that when I first started Grief to Hope, her daughter called me. And the lady had lost her son, but the sibling, the daughter called me and she said, I just want to make sure this isn't a scam. You're not trying to take And I said, I promise you.
You're trying to weasel your way into my mama's life insurance policy, are you?
Exactly. And
that's adorable.
No, it's totally free. And I won't ask for any money and blah, blah, blah. And she's the one that's been with me since the very beginning. And she lost her son in, I think it was 2019. and she just recently lost her husband, but she has been going with me since 2020. And I have many like that, many.
Oh, good
So
for
you
you.
can
That's
come for
awesome.
one session or 7 sessions or every session I have.
I love that so much. And it just fills a need because yeah, like you, when I started, when it first happened in 16, I mean, there were a couple that were out there, but I didn't feel that they were right for me.
Right.
Um, it wasn't a good fit for me. But there wasn't a lot of them out there.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I had toyed with the idea of building almost like a course for
Mhm.
people to go through.
Yep.
And I had it all written out, all the bones of it written out on the paper. It was ready to go. But I stalled. I didn't pull the trigger on it because I didn't feel that I was good enough to start this program.
Yep.
And I doubted myself out of existence for doing it. And then I muddled along and muddled along. And then I think I just like put my head in the sand and started building funnels, sales funnels, and and doing that because it's easier.
Yeah.
I didn't have the strength that I do now to be able to handle it then, until 2021 when we lost our granddaughter. And then I was like, this is what I want to do. I know where I need to go with my life at this point. And then I started writing my book. I started doing all those things. And then now I'm currently in the middle of launching. I'm in the beta program, my 12-week grief program that's coming out just to help mothers that have lost a child, to get back that spark of joy again. Because it's so hard.
Yeah.
And if you don't have a purpose, it makes it 50 billion times harder
Yes.
to do it because you have nothing to get up for, nothing to strive for.
That's exactly why grief to hope. And I try to explain, like, grief to hope is not just, it's not as, it's a place where you can voice and have your grief mask ripped off, and you can be authentic,
Yeah.
and you can say things that are hurtful, or that
Yes.
people have hurt, and we're just open and honest. But it's also a place that we laugh. I tell everybody, if you laugh here, you can't feel guilty about it, right? Because
Right.
that's one of the things we do. We feel guilty
Guilt. Yeah.
laughing.
Guilt is a big thing.
Yeah, experiencing happiness is something that I try to tell everybody, if you do it, if you live in honor of them, for the both of you, that perspective changes versus victimizing yourself, and looking at yourself at, like, this happened to me, and I'm not sure if I can deal with it, and how am I going to make it, and how's things are forever changed. Well, in a reactive way, that's happened. But in a proactive way, you can say, I'm going to do this now because this happened to me.
Yeah.
I'm going to share this because, as grievers, we could just, not share our story. We can just grieve,
Pull up
right?
and just stay inside the four walls of our house and never see the light of day. And no
Right.
one would give two shits about it.
Not one care, because they would say, oh, she lost her son or she lost her daughter,
They would
right?
justify the actions.
Yeah. Or we do what we do as grief coaches and experts and people, that because we care. We know that big, empty, painful feeling. And we want to help you go through it, and how you have to start living with grief, right? And that's what it's about. Like, I have to live with grief. I don't have, and I tell everybody, listen, I am not happy-go-lucky 24/7. Trust me, ask my husband, right? So,
right, exactly. Ask my inner thought process some days.
Right. I am, but I do get up out of bed, forcing myself to say, what am I going to expect from me today?
Right.
And how is that going to benefit honoring my son? And that is how I move along my day. And I'll never quit, because I've got like the biggest goal, right? Like, I can't stop till I meet him. And then that's my judgment, right? Then he can say, Mom, way to go, or Mom, geez Louise, did you, you know, whatever,
Right.
right? So that's my goal.
Love
And
that.
it fuels my fire. It ignites my passion. And I just hope to never, ever stop and try to heal in myself, but also try to touch as many people to let them know you're not alone. You are
Yeah,
so not alone.
absolutely. I've had, so I've, in my local community, we have a Facebook group, for our local town, and I'm in it, and someone made a post in there about, they had lost their child, a couple years prior, and they were looking for an in-person meetup. Well, I hadn't created that yet, but it was on my agenda to do probably next year. Well, I've sped up the process, to be able to do it because there's such a need for this that it breaks my heart, to be honest, that there is a need for it.
Right.
And then in the next breath, it breaks my heart again because I can facilitate it because I
Yes.
have that experience. And then it breaks my heart again because there's a need for it.
Right.
But
Right.
I'm like, you know what? If not someone else, why not me? If no one else is going to do it, why not me? I'm a big proponent of going to the things, and I don't want to speak ill of psychologists and therapists and stuff like that. They have their place in this world. Absolutely. It is not someone that I want to go see for things, but others do, and I respect that. And
Yes.
so for me, for a therapist, they would have to have gone through so that they can understand the emotions and the lack of emotions, from when something like this happens. And so it's very, I don't know, it's a driver for me to get these things up and running for the people that need them, because otherwise it's almost like they're these little islands and they're floating off into the sea by themselves.
Yeah.
Look at little sea otters, you know how they hold their hands, so they don't like float apart in the ocean. Like,
So
I just want to
cute.
hold everyone's hands, so we don't float apart in the sea of grief. You know what I'm saying?
That is
I
awesome.
just want to provide and give back and be a facilitator for someone else to move forward so that they're never stuck in that place of nothingness and that
Right.
place of hopelessness and that place of, damn, I don't want to live here anymore,
Right.
which is very big. I mean, it's huge.
Yeah. It's, and one of the things that I love, that I love the sea otter thing. You've got some great little cute little things. I do love that. I'm like, I want to be a sea otter with you.
Oh,
Yeah,
I'm a little sea otter.
I love it. I love it. We'll hold hands together. But I think one of the greatest things that we as grievers is that we again are the biggest givers. I've told this every single session I've ever had, is that if you find somebody that's grieving, you're going to find a giver
Yeah.
a lot of times. And that's
Most of the time.
yeah,
Yeah.
and that's because we've hurt the biggest pain, like we've felt the biggest pain there ever was. And that is why we just feel so compelled to help, right? And so I think that if you get into a group of people that are grieving, it's amazing to watch how everybody wants to help everybody when they tell their story.
Yeah.
And one of the greatest things in my group is that as people share their story, you can feel the compassion within the group, even on Zoom,
Mhm.
of they honestly, they feel they want to help, they want to touch, they want to encourage. And that's one of the greatest things, is that Grief to Hope is really about the future of setting goals and
Yeah.
to move forward in a way that you, as at your pace, right? And when you're comfortable. But it's also about finding and listening to other stories that, and I tell that to other people because everybody may not resonate with my story, but
Right.
they may resonate with a suicide story, or they may resonate with health or cancer,
Mhm.
or COVID was a big thing where
Right.
people were dying from COVID. And they didn't resonate with me, but they resonated with someone else. And that's why
Right.
I tell them your story is so important, to tell, and that whenever you feel certain that you're okay with sharing, then whenever you're certain of that, then those certain people will need to
Find
hear.
you. Mm-hmm.
And so, it's compassion, it's having that feeling. But back to your point with counselors, that's why I have so many people join my group, is because I don't want fixed. I don't want you to go in there and prescribe me pills and try to fix me, and say that you know what I'm going through. I want to talk to people that are actually
That have been through where I've been.
Yeah, that I can actually say, how did you handle that? And listen, but I don't, if I don't feel it, that's for me, that's, for me. But a lot of times that's why I have people in my group say, this is the place for me, because counseling wasn't what I needed, because I didn't feel like they knew what I was going through. However, when I start my sessions, every single one, I tell them I am not a licensed professional. And that I encourage, I am a grief coach, and that I talk from experience, and that if they feel they need additional help, to absolutely seek that. Because there's some things that I can't help with.
And there's some things that you probably don't want to help with because it's too in the weeds, or too technical, or too nitty gritty, or whatever it is. I'm the same way. I tell everyone I'm not a licensed psychologist, counselor, therapist.
Right.
I'm not that at all.
And I try to tell people I deal with the future, right? Like I deal with how you respond to your future. Things have happened. We talk about how we respond, and then future moving forward. And some counselors, they can handle all that back stuff. I can't do that. So.
Well, that makes sense. Because I think I was just on another podcast, and we talked about like childhood traumas and stuff, and how we bring them into our world, and we just start chucking them at the people we're around, because we're not dealing with them. But in the business world, when you're in the online business world, mindset is one of the biggest key components, and I think that's what has helped me the most going through this, was the mindset work, because it's a mindset game. To be 100% honest, it's a mindset game. And if you can not perfect your mindset, I don't ever want to say that, but if you can be better than you were yesterday and do small little tweaks and stuff along the way, it will help you tremendously.
Absolutely. And those small things add up to much larger things. And I try to tell people, listen, I would, in my work of Grief to Hope in 2020, when I started this, I have succeeded and I have failed tons of times, and I will continue to do that. Right. And one of my biggest failures was, I thought, I'm going to land this TEDx talk, and I'm going to finally be able to, spread the word out that way. And I didn't get selected. And I thought, it was such a letdown, because I was thinking, how am I going to reach people? But what I did, instead of doing that TEDx talk, because that is a lot of work. Just for anybody information, that is a lot of work.
I thought about it, but I'm like, I don't know if I'm ready for that yet.
It's a lot of work. But what it catapulted me in was writing my book. I was like, you know what? This is the time that I need to write my book. And that is what I've leaned on. So even though I had these failures, and at the time you're like crushed, you're like, you didn't get selected. You have setbacks, but I always say that if it's not a failure, it's a failure to learn. So as long as I'm learning and going through the things that I'm supposed to go through, that's what teaches me and helps me in what I'm going to do. So it's absolutely, at the time, it's devastating, right? I wouldn't say devastating, but it's
feels devastating though, because
you feel like
I had all my eggs in this basket. I was going to help the world. Everyone was going to, so many people were going to be touched by it. But then you're like, well, crap, what now? Now I need to have that platform, but it was just another door was open behind you
that I didn't know, right? And so I could have never, I have been writing, but I had never like jumped all in and got it, edited and all that stuff, and I was like, this is it. And so it's really been a blessing, because I have a lot of people that say, hey, I'm not comfortable talking. I'm not comfortable in a group. I love what you're doing, but I'm just not there. And that's why I wrote the book. The book is strictly my story, my details, and how I developed Grief to Hope and how that program works. So that is the reason why I wrote the book. It's to be another tool, another resource, if you just aren't comfortable. And some people will never be comfortable coming into a group setting. And this way, and what I've heard a lot of people, I mean, it's raw, it's gritty, it's transparent. I am always been transparent with anything that I do. But people resonate with, like, I hear people all the time saying, I was shaking my head reading your book. Like, I was like, yeah, that's what I felt. Yeah, that is true. Yeah. Because it's raw, it's open, it's out there. Because a lot of people don't talk about that pure ugliness right after the death, and how you have to face, each and every day. And mine was a little different. I was like right in the midst of the holidays and things like that. It's been amazing.
But it's, you touched on like all those raw emotions, like right after the fact, so when my father died in 2005, like I was crushed. He was my hero. I had him on such a pedestal. We had a great relationship. And he had gotten sick from cancer, pancreatic cancer, and he waited to go in. He didn't know he had cancer or anything like that. And so he waited probably 6 months before he went to the doctor. Well, at that time, he only had, I want to say, like 2 months that he lived beyond the doctor's appointment, because it was so quick.
Yeah.
And I was so unprepared for that funeral, for losing that person in my life, that when they came in, we're trying to plan it, and they wanted to know about his organs and stuff, because they have a very finite amount of time. And so when you mentioned this with your son, I was like, oh, I can really, I feel that one, because I was so unprepared, and I was so angry that he didn't go in sooner. And I had all these emotions, and we're planning a funeral that I had never wanted to plan, because I figured they're just going to live to be a million.
Right.
Like, it's one of those things, right? You just don't talk about death and grief and loss, and you only focus on the sunshine and the rainbows and the happiness. That's it.
Right.
And they came and they specifically talked to me. They didn't talk to my brother. He was behind me, a couple people, and he's older than me. But I was the first one out of the door, and they asked if they could take my father's eyes and give them to someone. I said, no, you can't have my father's parts. Like, that's my father. And I was now, if I could go back, I would have absolutely have let them take them and take all the parts that they wanted, just so he could have lived, through someone else.
Yeah.
But at the time, I was caught so unaware.
Right.
And it just took me by surprise. And my mother, bless her soul, they were married for like 35 years. And she was just beside herself, losing, her partner in life, and it was just, so these are the things like that I want to talk about, that I want to push forward with, because I think that there's a huge need for it. Not like to sit down and like a lawyer's office and plan out like your next financial whatever, but like to just get the stuff on paper and plan your funeral, so that those around you aren't having to deal with it in the weakest times of their life.
Right.
We're not talking about this, and it's becoming more and more abundantly clear that we're not talking about this as a society, because it's still, look at this, don't pay attention to the pain. You can go get a pill for that. Let's just go over here, and we're going to rip roar through this, and we're going to have fun through this. Don't worry about that. Just don't worry about that. No consequences here. We're going to be just even worse than a microwave society. We're going to be like instant, like, boom, done.
And I try to tell people, listen, close your eyes and count to 3. And that was how fast I lost my son.
Yes.
Like, literally, like, close your eyes, 1, 2, 3. That's how I lost my son. And that is what people do not want to take into effect. They don't want to think, and I get it.
It's hard. It's too painful. Of course it is.
Right. But what's worse is being on the other side of it and trying to figure out all the things that meant the world to that person in the worst possible pain of your life. And I try to tell people, think about it when you're in labor, right? Could you imagine making a decision in that pain? There's no way you're thinking the way that you should be thinking.
Right. You're not thinking clearly at all.
Right. Like if you break an arm, or somebody going to say, hey, what do you think picture means the most to, your dad?
Yeah. You're going to invest my money right now. Where do you think I should be buried at?
Right. Exactly.
I don't care.
Right. So I try to tell people, unfortunately, it will happen. Grief will happen. Death will happen. But if you do what you say and just tell people, like, if you don't want to be cremated, let it be known. If you want to have a funeral service and everybody and their neighbor comes, great. If you want it to nobody to be there, great. But let me know, right? Yeah. And it's like, I try to tell people all the time, like, listen, you're going to get what I give you. So if you don't tell me any different, that's what you're going to get. And I really believe that we have to start thinking in a way that's just logical. Like, please don't put me in that place. Please don't leave me in that place where I have to make decisions in the worst pain of my life.
Yeah. I agree wholeheartedly. It is so tough. Grief is so tough. Death is so tough. But you know what's tougher? Not talking about it.
Yeah.
What's tougher is not, like, life is hard, but so is death. And they're equally hard, but one of them you can plan for.
Yeah. That's beautiful.
Life, you don't really get to plan for it. Like, life happens. Like, there's certain things you can plan for in life, but death you can absolutely plan for. Yeah. Because that is a guarantee in life.
Yes, it does happen.
100%.
We can't live forever. We're living longer, but we can't live forever.
Right. Absolutely. I don't know that I'd want to. I could imagine the aches and pains and the broke downness that I would be. And I'd be like, man.
I know. I'm such a baby when I'm sick with a cold. I couldn't imagine. Like,
right. Living to be 245. And you're like, what happened?
My husband would be like, oh, no, please.
Right. Well, I appreciate you so much. Thank you so much for joining me on this podcast. And can you quickly run back through, like, the whole grief thing that you talk about in your program? And people, if you're dealing with grief, if you're going through it and you need something, check out the resources at the end of this podcast, because they're amazing and she will help you so, so much. So, all right. G, what is G for?
Gift of time.
R
is receive help.
I,
inspiration.
E,
expectations.
F,
feel everything. And then to hope.
Yes, you have to go to hope, because if you just stay there, then you're just stuck. Yep. So find a reason, find a purpose, find something in your life that makes you happy. Even if it's buying a new set of earrings every day or whatever it may be. It doesn't have to be anything extravagant, but just find a purpose to live again.
Yes.
And I appreciate you, Hope, for being on here.
It has been my pleasure.
Guys, check out her books, check out her program, and check out the next episode. Bye. See you in the next one.
Bye-bye.
Thank you so much for listening to this special episode of Release. All the links plus a few extras are posted in the show notes below. And if you think someone you know could benefit by listening to this episode, please share it with them. And as always, keep going, keep being, keep doing. You are amazing.